Hello, and welcome back to Peculiar, where church people are weird. And we get that word peculiar from the book written by the Apostle Peter, where he says that you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood and a holy nation, and he goes on to say a peculiar people. Now, he did not mean peculiar as in strange or odd. He meant special and chosen and separate to Jesus. And the reason, however, that church people are still weird is because if you are chosen to be used by God, it will change the way that a person acts. It will make them completely different from anyone else in the world, therefore making them weird. Now, since we are the chosen people of God, and we should follow, in fact, that's the word that Jesus used originally, follow what Jesus said and did. And the best way to know what Jesus said and did is to use his own account of what he said and did. The stuff written in the Bible is still the best way to know what God, especially in the human form of Jesus, was thinking at any given time. You'll notice this Bible that I'm using has red letters mixed in the middle. And in any Bible that uses these red letters, those are typically the direct quotes of Jesus. I don't know any other reason that red letter text is ever used. Some Bibles just elect not to use it at all, and I'm sure there are probably some others out there that may even use them in different colors for different reasons. I don't own any, I've not seen any, but I'm sure there are some out there. There's a lot of Bibles in this world. So anyway, over the past couple weeks, we have been talking about the most famous, most well-known sermon that Jesus ever preached. And that is found in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. Jesus' opening was to tell people the type of people, tell people what it took to be blessed in his way of thinking and doing things. Things such as being a peacemaker, being poor in spirit, being meek, pure, desiring righteousness, and living through persecution. Because he said, since you are following me, you will be persecuted. He went on to say that they were to be different, to stick out, to shine as a light in the world, and that they needed to be more righteous than the people who tried to be the most righteous of anyone in the world. You will find out later that he calls these people hypocrites because even though they tried to be righteous to the letter of the law, their hearts on the inside were not right. He goes on and says, and begins to tell them how he's raising the standard. And that's what we talked about last week, was some of the ways that he raised the standard. He raised the standard from don't kill to don't be angry without a cause, and don't mock, don't hate, making those things equivalent and telling the importance of forgiveness. He went on and said that he raised the bar from adultery being the sin to having lust on the inside being a sin. He, in fact, put divorce on the level of adultery in his words, and then went on to say that we shouldn't make promises, but instead just don't lie, and you won't have to make these types of intense promises people would make back in those days. And that's about where we left off. He has a couple more of these raising the bar statements that we're going to go over today. And then we're going to get into talking about something we've talked about on this podcast before, but some of the more in-depth ways that he talked about it. But first of all, let's get to his next point in his raising the bar statements. We pick up in Matthew chapter 5, verse number 38. If you have your Bibles, you can join with me. I don't believe I've ever said that on this podcast before, but yeah, it would be good if you got a hold of your own Bible and took some notes, wrote some stuff down, or at least on a separate sheet of paper wrote some notes down. But anyway, we're picking up Matthew chapter 5, verse number 38. Jesus says that ye have heard it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. Whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain, or go 2 miles. Give to him that asks you, and from him that would borrow of you, turn not away. A lot of words that may sound familiar to your average person walking down the street. We've all heard the words, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We've even heard it said by our modern day sages that an eye for an eye makes the world blind. We've heard people say, go the second mile. And all of those things come from right here. So, I've heard it said recently by some people talking about the people arguing that we don't really need the Bible. And they say, well, we can be good people without having to have religion to make those morals happen. The world before Jesus was very different from the world we live in now. We live in a world that has had 2,000 years of these teachings put inside of us. We have had 2,000 years of hearing that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If someone punches you in the eye, you can punch them back in the same eye. Or if someone knocks your tooth out, you get to punch him and knock his tooth out. We've lived in a world where a man came along and said an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. But that idea wasn't really out there in the world that this was a bad idea until Jesus. You see, even in the Old Testament, the judgment that was set forth in the law that Jesus is saying, let me expand for you, was that if someone knocks out your eye, equal justice can be served. If somebody kills somebody, equal justice is to be served. If someone steals something, if you can't give him the exact same thing back, give him the monetary value of said thing. That was just the judgment of the day. But Jesus comes along and says, if someone does something bad to you, don't do something bad back. He says, resist not evil. He says to turn the other cheek. Another famous saying that people use in our modern day and age. Turn the other cheek. Jesus was the one who said that. He literally meant that if someone slaps you in the face, let him slap you again. Go ahead and take it. Offer him, say, okay, man, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight you. And that is one of the hardest principles in the world for our modern culture to take. It was as hard then as it is now, if not harder. We are talking people who were living in a slave state, people who were foreign occupied. They were occupied by foreign forces at this point in time. And there was a vast group among them at the time who was vigilantly, militantly stating, we need to rebel, we need to take over and uprise against our government oppressors. And Jesus was talking to a group of people saying that resist was the way to go. We needed to resist our foreign occupiers. And he said, no. Just be a peaceful people. Just, you know what? If someone is unjust to you, don't be unjust back. I recently heard a political commentator talking about the modern politics and talking about how one side of the political aisle was being so incredibly belligerent about with all their political statements and with trying to take over courts or trying to push down certain bills or trying to flood the media with their point of view. And his argument was, he said, you know what? Fine. Let's just start playing by their rules. Let's just start being just as belligerent as them. Let's start trying to take over the court system in our way. Let's start doing all this justice. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, don't play by their rules, because you are not living under their system. That's actually what Jesus is saying here. Jesus is saying, don't live by their system anymore. Live by his system. Jesus wants you to live under his system. If you are a child of God, we're not living under America's system. We're not living under Canada's system. We're not living under the United Nations system, the European Union, wherever you may live. The government that matters the most in your life is not the state you live in, the province, the country, the city. First and foremost, as Kanye West put out on his album a while back, Jesus is king. Jesus is our king. Jesus is the one who's in charge. Jesus is the ruler and high priest. The reason that we are able to take the persecution, not resist, is because Jesus is our Lord and Savior. He talks about going to court. If someone takes you to court and sues you, takes the very clothes off your back, he says, offer him your outer garments as well. Offer him your undergarments, even. Offer him if he takes your coat, give him your shirt too. It's extreme. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem logical. At that point in time, because they were foreign occupied. If one of the soldiers of the day that was monitoring the streets under martial law were to walk up to someone and say, "You, Jew, pack my chest that I have here, this chest of gold, silver, weapons, whatever he may have. Pack my bags here, carry them." Legally, he was required to go a mile. But Jesus said, you know what? Go beyond the legal requirement. Go beyond what you're legally required to do. Show him that you're not doing this because Rome's in charge. Show him that you're doing this because you serve a higher king than Caesar. You serve King Jesus. So, yeah, it sounds a little crazy I live in the state of Kentucky. And in the state of Kentucky, we have these things called, Jeff Foxworthy calls them rednecks, and a few of them proudly take the term. Those are southern born and bred, the gun-toting, proud, self-made country fellas. And ladies, too. But the ones who think, I don't gotta depend on nobody. I don't need to call the cops. We don't call 911 around these parts. They tote their guns and say they can take care of themselves. I know a wide variety of these people. And one of the main attributes that I find among the people who hold to this point of view is if somebody wrongs me, I'm going to wrong them back in such a way that they'll never think to do it to me again. And those are the people that tend to have the hardest time, in my experience, with these words. I don't want anybody thinking I'm soft and I can't take care of myself. You see, the reason that this is hard to take is because this isn't supposed to be about being able to take care of yourself. You're not supposed to take care of yourself. The whole reason behind all of this and what makes it okay to live this way, what makes it okay to not have to be angry and hateful, is realizing that God takes care of me. And because God takes care of me, this is okay. Because God takes care of me, I can safely say that if the guy who punched me in the face deserves to be punched, there's a God out there who can do way more than I ever can with my little fist. If someone wronged someone else that I care deeply about, trust me, God is sovereign. God can be the judge, and God can take care of everything. He goes on to say this after this thing that I took way too long to talk about. He says, "Ye have heard that it has been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, he sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what good is that? Don't even the publicans the same? If ye salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Don't even publicans do so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." That's a big mouthful. And by the way, publican We're not talking about Republicans, as I heard someone put it recently. Publicans were tax collectors of the time. And the stereotype of the day was that publicans were the most dirty, rotten sinners that there were out there. They were the worst of the worst in the eyes of the people because typically they viewed them as traitorous Jews that had saddled up with the Romans so that they could make some big bucks. You saddled up with the enemy. Yeah. They thought they had sided with the enemy, went dirty, and that the stereotype was a lot of times they charged more money than they rightfully had the right to do. Publican was basically a synonym for sinner. Evil person. Jerk. Jesus said, if you love the people that love you, what good is that? Don't even the worst of the sinners do that? If you only say hi and hello and talk to the people who are your brothers and sisters, what good is that? Is that any better than the worst of the sinners? So let's unpack what he's saying here. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That makes perfectly logical sense. You should, by all means, love your neighbor. And he's not saying don't love your neighbor. You should love the people in your home area. You should love the insiders of your circle. You should love the people that you go to church with. You should love the people that you work with. You should love the people in your hometown. All the people that, if you're a white person, you should love white people. Good for you. Good job. If you're a black person, love black people. That's what love your neighbor sounds a lot like. It's the people who are already in your life, the people that are not outside your social circle, love them. Excellent. You're doing good. But he said, you are doing no better, no worse. Even the people in the mafia love people in the mafia. Even people in gangs love people in their own gangs. And that's typically the problem. The people inside the crime syndicate love the people inside the crime syndicate. I'm talking in extremes because that's what Jesus was doing. All the people inside of all the terrorist organizations, they love each other. They take care of their own. That's the stereotype, guys. They take care of their own. The folks inside the KKK think the folks inside the KKK are the most wonderful people on earth. Don't mean that they're good people. It just means they're doing the bare minimum required to survive inside society. Loving your neighbor is bare minimum to survive in society. The issue comes in when he says, and hate your enemy. This is the words that Jesus has issues with. He doesn't want you to hate your enemies. You know those guys on the opposite side of the enemy line when you're going to war? Jesus says you're supposed to love those people. The people on the opposite end of the protest line when you go to stand at the courthouse and wave your signs. The folks with the signs that say the opposite thing of yours. Love those people. The people voting the opposite of you at the polling booth. Love those people. The people who wronged you 20 years ago. Love those people. The people who were shoving you down in the school hallway years ago, in high school, in middle school, in elementary school. Love those people. That guy who said a racist remark to you, love that guy. The guy that was responsible for you getting falsely accused or fired from your job, love that guy. Love that girl. Love that woman. Love that kid. Love them. Love your enemy. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. Pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. It gets hard when you start putting names and faces on the circumstances. But that's the standard that Jesus put out. That's what it takes to go beyond the law and enter into this thing called the kingdom of God, into this new dispensation known as grace. You see, Jesus said, because when you love your enemies, what's that mean? Love, is that an emotion? It sounds like it's a verb. You love your enemies by blessing people that curse you, people that wish you ill, people that don't want you to succeed, people that are actively trying to cause you not to succeed. Do good to people who actively hate you. The racist jerk that's out there, Jesus said, love him. Do good to him. Do good to that absolute jerk-faced boss that you've got. Do good. That goes a step beyond having good thoughts towards him. It means when he tears you up one way and down the other, respond with a smile. Tell him to have a nice day. And if you can, do a favor for him at some point. That's what Jesus wants us to do. He goes another level and he says, if they have despitefully used you and persecuted you, they have actively put a target on your back. You have been chosen. And it's not been for a good reason. You have been chosen to be the target of all of their scorn and punishment. Is there a good reason? Just because they don't like you? Just because somewhere in the back of their mind they think they have some justifiable reason to make your life an absolute nightmare. Jesus says, come to him and say, God, I want you. Don't pray for him like that one country song says. I pray your brakes go out, and I pray flower pot falls on your head. I pray all of your biggest nightmares come true, something like that. No, not that. Jesus said, pray for them. Pray for them in a loving way. Pray for them like you would for your own mother or father. Pray for them like you would your wife. Pray for them like you would your daughter or your son or your husband. Pray for them in the manner that you would a friend, someone you actually like. Pray for them to find salvation. Pray for them to find it in their hearts to be saved. Pray for them to make it to heaven. All those things that don't come natural as a human. Pray for them. Because if you do that, you'll truly be a son or a daughter of God. Because God, He shines the sun on good and bad people. He sends the rain on good and bad people. He's fair because as humans, He made all of us. And He wants to treat us right. He says, what good does it do you to love only people that love you? You're not going to grow as a person if you love people that love you. You're not going to be any better than anyone else in the world if you love people that love you. The worst jerks on the planet love the jerks that partner with them. I mentioned, literally, that's the way mob bosses and political dictators live. They love their inside guys. There were genuinely... There's that one picture that you see out there, and it just seems a little wrong, where you see that picture of Adolf Hitler smiling with a cute little German kid. Because in his eyes, he was a good, loving leader. In his eyes, he was the good guy. In everyone's eyes, they're the good guy. There's not a whole lot of people out there who realize, I'm the villain of the story. But he had people in his inner circle that he loved, genuinely, because he was a person made in the image of God. But every person has it in them to be the villain of the story. And our default position is actually villain. Because at the beginning of time, we were corrupted. We went wrong. We went off the rails. So that's why we have to strive to do something unnatural. We have to do something that doesn't come naturally, something that the worst of sinners don't do, and that is, don't just be good to our people. Don't just love our people. Love the people who aren't our people. Because even Adolf Hitler can smile and be nice to a little kid sometimes. Even Adolf Hitler had a woman that he loved. That's why he closes this with the standard that he leaves us with in this section of his sermon. Be ye therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now, just before people go out there and say, oh no, he's trying to get us to be perfect. No. That's... Get the standard of your definition of perfection out of your head. God, the original statement here is to be a complete, whole, mature human being. Live your life to the fullest of what it means to be a Christian made in the image of God. Be ye therefore perfect. God is living the absolute standard of the best that God can be. And to be like Him, you need to live to the absolute fullest standard of what you, filled with the Spirit of God, can be. That means love your neighbor. That means love your enemy. That means pray for jerks. Pray for the people that don't like you. Pray for the people who make your life a living nightmare. That means turn the other cheek. That means take insults every once in a while. That means don't look on a woman who isn't your wife. That means Don't be looking for lust. Don't be hating people. Don't be lying. All those things that we've already covered over the past. That's him raising the standard, and he finally puts the standard out there. I want you to be perfect, and by that I mean I want you to be whole. I want you to be mature. I want you to be a grown-up. I want you to live to the fullest standard of what it means to be a child of God. Thank you for listening, and next time we'll get to the thing I said I hoped we might be able to get to before I realized just how long those verses were going to take. And that is, we're going to talk about prayer next week. And I know I've already talked about prayer more than once on here, but I'm going to cover it in its full context at the beginning of Matthew chapter 6 next week. Thank you all for listening.